Good.
Stick around.
All right, let's bring on Morgan Alexander now, who was a player for Syracuse women's lacrosse when Regy Thorpe was the associate head coach for the Orange women's team. Regy Thorpe, of course, announced last week that he will be the new head women's lacrosse coach. Morgan, who is doing some broadcasting work down in Texas, doing some coaching as well. Morgan, welcome on. Fill us in on kind of what's going on in your world since graduating from the Cuse.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really busy, to say the least. I'm coaching a lot down here. Coaching at Highland Park High School next year. Great program here in Dallas. And Mike Pressler is the head coach of the boys team. And I coach with former UNC alum Sloan Brown now, so that'll be great. But yeah, doing some freelance work for SMU football, which is crazy. ACC now, so I get to see them play Syracuse this year, which will be fun. Yeah, they'll
be coming down to SMU, so that'll be a fun game for you, I'm sure. Let's get into your thoughts on Regy Thorpe being named the head coach, and any player that I've spoken to that was played for Syracuse when he was the associate head coach raves about him. So how excited were you just to see the news and that it was Regy who's going to be the new head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think when that news broke, I screenshotted it and sent it to 15,000 different people. I mean, when you look back on my college career, I played 6 years at Syracuse, and I'm from upstate New York, South Jeff High School. Reggie's been a big part of my life in the recruiting process, and then, I went through 6 knee surgeries, and I couldn't have picked a better coach to have played for during that time period. It's his ability to not only, fire up a team game day, but all throughout the week, on and off the field. That's what really sets him apart. Even when he went to Florida, I retore my ACL, which most people know, and he wasn't the coach that year. I called him immediately.
Yeah.
And I told him what was going on, and he's at Florida talking to me on the phone about, you'll get through this. You got, just, and that is something that's so special because he wasn't just the coach while he was at Syracuse for me. He was that mentor even when he left. And I think so many people feel the same way about him for sure.
Just how smart of a coach is he in terms of X's and O's of the game? We know he was working on the defense for Florida and seems to be a great defensive strategist, but just being around him, how much of a sense did you get for how good he is in terms of X's and O's of the game?
It's funny because everyone always says, Reggie's a defensive guy. I'm like, well, I was a lefty attacker, and he was constantly giving me input on the field of okay, you need to take 2 steps to your right to get your hands free more. This is how you have to do things. I actually have a vivid memory of me running on the treadmill in Manly and him coming up to me and being like, Morgan, do you know you have the highest shot percentage in NCAA right now? And I'm like, no. And he's like, well, I know that. And he's just very in tune to the offense and where to be as well. And I think so many people, pigeonhole them to as you're a defensive coach. Nah, he would step in the offense. He'd play with us in practice, which was always so fun because he's so competitive. And you really learn from him. He's just truly, one of the best coaches I've ever had in my entire life, for sure. And I couldn't be more happy for him and his family, for sure.
Yeah, that's high praise. And you're not the only player I've spoken to that has said that. It just seems like everyone raves about how good of a coach he is that has gotten a chance to play for him. What can you describe his personality? I mean, it seems like he's kind of a jokester, and just that treadmill story you just shared seems like that kind of fits what I've heard about him. But what's his personality like as a head coach?
Yeah, I think he does a great job of being this lighthearted, kind human, but when you get on the field, he transforms into that coach that's going to, fire you up, make you play hard, but he's also that father figure to you as well. And I think that that's what really sets coaches apart from one another, is that ability to connect with you off the field, and it makes you respect you more as a coach when you're in those really tight games where he might get on you a little bit, you've got to go full speed here, you've got to get that ground ball. You take it better because of the person he is off the field, if that makes sense. And I think that's what makes people love him so much, is his ability to make that connection. Like I said, my family's known him since I've been younger. He even, when I was in high school and he helped recruit me, came to some of my games in high school. And then I had a younger sister, and he was still invested in my younger sister's life while I was at Syracuse, constantly asking me about what she's doing, how's it going. That just shows the person he is. And so then when you get to the field and he gets intense, you respect that. You're like, I want to play hard for him because he's so invested in me. And he just does a great job of lighting that fire. One of the best stories I have about him is he'd always have some candy out on the table before games to have us, get hype on some candy. And he always would be like over there grabbing some himself and be like, let's go. Like, he just is such that hype man of like constantly getting you engulfed in the game and ready to roll. So definitely was a hard transition when he left too, because of that impact he's had on my life for so much. And you always just wanted the best for him, even when he was at Florida and Pitt after he left Syracuse. So.
Yeah, he's done a great job. He did a great job with the Florida team. They made it to back-to-back Final Fours, and UNC is the reigning champion on the women's lacrosse side of things. They got the best of Florida in the first Final Four game, but UNC got the best of literally everyone this year. Morgan, when you look at the Syracuse team, and it was a very young team this past year. I'm sure you watched all the games because I know you're staying locked into the program. What do you make of what they have potentially coming back? And that makes this even more exciting, right? That not only is it Regy, who I'm sure you're thrilled about, but there's a good young core that's only going to get better.
Yeah, I think it was so quick for people to, judge of scores and final outcomes this year. But I think you have to look at how young teams are and how it takes a while to be developed into certain players. And, when you look at some teams that are super dominant, they have a lot of great seniors. So I think the older these girls get and the more they play together, the better that they'll get, right? And I think when you have someone like Regy leading the way too, he's going to make sure that he creates this great family atmosphere for these kids and continues to bring that culture of Syracuse that makes it so special. Syracuse is truly a special school on so many levels. I'm so grateful to be a part of it, and he's a big part of that as well. And I think he'll do a great job recruiting because he has that culture. Everybody knows who he is. He's just this, lovable person that you want to play for. So I'm excited to see what transfers Syracuse might get, who's returning, who's coming up next year. I know they have a great recruiting class coming in this fall. It's going to be great to see how this team progresses into next year. And I think, having a quote-unquote down year, as some would say, okay, but, a lot of these girls are returning, and they're just going to continue to get better. You can't buy game time, and so the more and more game time you have at that high of a level, the better you're going to get. So, it's a tough year this year, but I think they're going to continue to get better and better. You look at some of the best Syracuse teams that we've had, and I was a part of one of them. We were all fifth years and seniors, and it took time to get to that point. But once you're there, it's a totally different ball game. And I think with Regy being to back-to-back Final Fours, he can lead that way and hopefully instill in the girls, we're back. We're going to be doing this year for sure.
Chatting with Morgan Alexander, who played when Regy Thorpe was an assistant coach for the Orange, the associate head coach, and he was the associate head coach under Gary Gait, Morgan. So while we've got you, we got to get your thoughts a little bit on the men's lacrosse team as well. And your former head coach is now the head coach of the men's team. They had a great run this year. I'm sure you were following, going to the Final Four. How cool is it to kind of see Gary Gait on the men's side having some success and get the Orange back sort of where they belong in the Final Four?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I almost took a flight to go, but my younger sister, she actually went. That's the Syracuse I remember. Growing up as a kid, I wanted to go to Syracuse because I remember being in sixth grade watching them play in the Final Four and winning it with Kenny Nims and against Cornell. Like, that's what I remember from Syracuse, and it's been a really long time since we've gotten there. And to see that success this year, and I think it's just going to continue to go up and up from here for the men's program. I mean, they're just so talented across the board. The creativity, everything Gary brought to the women's program, he's bringing to the men's, and I think you can see it on the field, and it's just so cool to watch, and it makes you happy to see, because in the previous years, I'm like, oh yeah, Syracuse men, we haven't been back, but then now it's like, okay, we are back. We're a very talented team across the board, and it's really cool to watch. We're also fun to watch. I think that's what makes it so cool about Syracuse, is we're not just, kind of bland, whatever. We do some creative, fun shots that make it all over, Sports Center, things like that. So it's cool to see Gary doing that. And definitely, I hope we can get to the point where Syracuse women and men can be at that Final Four together someday. That'd be really cool to see.
Yeah, you talk about recruiting and why Regy will bring in some good recruits. I'm sure he's kind of aligned in that theory that Gary has, which, as you said, it's a fun team to watch. Gary lets you be creative offensively, and if you can practice it and you do it in practice, then he's fine with you doing something wild in the game. I'm sure that's something that maybe was kind of attractive to you when you were picking where to go to school, is knowing that, okay, it's Gary Gait and I can be creative offensively.
Yeah, learning from him. I think that was the biggest thing was, like, growing up as a kid, the thing that I loved about lacrosse was the ability to do cool tricks between the legs, behind the back, around the world. That's what made me really love lacrosse, not just running by people and ripping shots. It was about, that's so cool how he can handle a stick and, you know, throw a shot in between his legs and the goal. I wanted to be able to do those things. And then he would teach those things at all of his camps growing up. So you're just like in awe as a kid. You're like, I want to do this. And then you get to the point where you can do those things, and then he allows you to do that in practice on the field. Like, and he encourages it. And that's what makes the sport so fun, is the creative things you can do. I think a lot of people can say the same thing, is like, if I take a shot behind the back in practice, I'm never afraid he's going to be like, don't do that again. He's like, love it, keep going.
Yeah.
Or, you know, and that's, like, to me, is what makes the sport so fun and what made me love it. And Reggie's the same exact way. I mean, I have so many memories of him doing the same things behind the backs, and he played in practice with us on the offensive end. He's just, you know, and that's another thing, is like, they're truly engulfed in the sport and don't just stand there with a whistle in their hand. They're right in the mix of it and showing you things game time. And I don't know, since being a kid and growing up an hour north of Syracuse, being around Gary and Regy since I've been a young girl, it's just been so impactful for me as a player in how creativity was huge. I mean, I scored 2 behind-the-back goals in games at Syracuse, you know, and I never felt like if I shot that, it was going to be the end of the world.
Right.
You know? It was like, that's great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
keep
Good job,
doing it.
you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Morgan, continued success down there. That's awesome to hear that you're coaching at Highland Park. That is the premier high school program down there in that area. So we appreciate you hopping on. It sounds like it'll be a really exciting hire, and good to hear your perspective on it, because I know a lot of the Orange alums are excited about Regy Thorpe as well. But thanks for taking some time with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and go Orange. I'm always rooting, basketball, football, everything. I'm obsessed, and it's probably a little unhealthy, but, you know, I'm a true Syracuse fan forever, so.
I love it. All right, there's Morgan Alexander, who played for the Orange women's lacrosse team, and she is a huge fan of all the programs. I think you can tell she's very excited about that football game down at SMU next year, so good for
job,
her.
Tim. Good interview. Great job.
Thank you. Did I do a good Steve impersonation?
Yes. Did I do a good Paulie impersonation where I didn't say a word? That's everybody's favorite time of the show, is when I shut up for 5 minutes.
Well, when we come back, we do have to talk a little bit about Messiah Hampton. It sounds like he has picked Oregon, which I think all Syracuse fans are kind of bracing for that. Still awesome.
Fire Fran Brown immediately. How could he miss out on a recruit?
Number 1 player in New York was considering Syracuse is awesome. So
you can't let kids in your backyard go. Fire him immediately. Thank you.
So we'll talk about that some more. More serious conversation.
I'm just saving everybody's Twitter rambles. Can't believe you missed out on him. Somebody's angry.
I don't think anyone is saying that, which is saying something about how good Fran Brown has done.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
Usually they are jumping to do that if they can.
I'm sure there's at least one person.
There's always one.
Yeah. I'm that guy. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. It's ESPN